This is the Prophecy Project. Understanding the times, the nations in military conflicts, with Bible teacher and author Alan Bonk.
Welcome. This is session number 40 of the Prophecy Project. This lesson is the sixth in a series of teachings on understanding the world we live in. In my last session, I spoke about the Nephilim Wars and their deaths. The Nephilim ended up with the great flood, but their spirits from within their bodies are to continue living on the earth after the flood, till the final judgment at the end of the world. And they will be demons to fight against mankind. We also looked at the two main groups of fallen angels, the 200 watchers and the angels which followed Satan's rebellion. They are actually the 1/3 of the stars which are drawn away by Satan. In my video sessions on angels, sessions 32 and 33, I explained that there would be at least 52 million fallen angels. In fact checking, I realized that that number should be 34 million, 1/3 of 104 million. Please consider this a correction of what I had said. These angels are in the second heavens, and some, including Satan, are operating on the earth. Now, let's start after the flood. The flood had caused the demise of all the men, beasts, and Nephilim, with the exception of some animals and Noah and his sons. 8 souls total. They began to expand and establish themselves on the earth. We find in the book of Jubilees that the sons began making cities or encampments for themselves. They began to separate themselves to some extent from each other. We also are told that Canaan, the grandson of Shem, Noah's oldest son, had been taught how to read and write by his father, and that he had found the doctrines of the fallen watchers written on a rock. This is the account from Jubilees chapter 8, verse 3. And he found a writing which former generations had carved on the rock, and he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it and sinned owing to it. For it contained the teachings of the watchers in accordance with they used to observe the omens of the sun and moon and stars and all the signs of heaven. And he wrote it down and said nothing regarding it, for he was afraid to speak to Noah about it, lest he should be angry with him on account of it. It's obvious it did not take long for men to begin to go astray after the flood. And it also did not take long for the spirits of the Nephilim to begin attacking Noah's children. In fact, they began to overwhelm them. Let's look at Jubilees chapter 10, verse 5. Noah asks Yahweh for help. And you, God, know how your watchers, the fathers of these spirits, acted in my day. As for these spirits which are living, imprison them, and take them fast in the place of condemnation. Hold them. It's Dudale. And let them not bring destruction on the sons of your servant, my sovereign ruler. For these are malignant and created in order to destroy. Let them not rule over the spirits of the living, for you alone can exercise dominion over them. And let them not have power over the sons of the righteous, from henceforth and forevermore. And Yahweh, our sovereign ruler, bade us, these are the angels, to bind all. And the chief of the spirits, Mastema, came and said, Yahweh, Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them listen to my voice, and do all that I shall say unto them. For if some of them are not left to me, I shall not be able to execute the power of my will on the sons of men. For these are for corruption and leading astray before my judgment. for great is the wickedness of the sons of men. Verse 9, and God said, let the 10th part of them remain before him, and let 9 parts descend into the place of condemnation. This is amazing on many different levels. First, we see the spiritual reality of demon activity. And secondly, we understand the command structure and who's in charge of those demons. Now, before you ask, who is Mastema? We are told in verse 11 of this same account that Mastema is Satan. I suspect that Mastema is Satan's proper name. And Satan is an office or a title, as in the Satan. Now, thirdly, this is an account of Noah's prayer to Yahweh. It shows the power of prayer of a righteous man. God incarcerates 90% of the demons in response to Noah's request. I want to make a quick point now about the diseases that are put upon men by demons. It continues on in verses 12 and 13. And we, the angels, explained to Noah all the medicines of the demons' diseases, together with their seductions, how he might heal them with herbs of the earth. And Noah wrote down all things in a book, as we instructed him concerning every kind of medicine. Thus the evil spirits were precluded from hurting the sons of Noah. Wow, I would certainly like to see that book. We are told later in this account that it was given to Shem for safekeeping. And then Noah dies and sleeps with his fathers. Now, back to Noah's sons. Jubilees 11:2. The sons of Noah began to war against each other, to take captive and to slay each other, and to shed the blood of men on the earth, and to eat blood, and to build strong cities, and walls and towers, and individuals began to exalt themselves above the nation or the family, and to found the beginning of kingdoms, and to go to war, people against people, and nation against nation, and city against city. And all began to do evil, and acquire arms, and to teach their sons war. And they began to capture cities, and to sell male and female slaves. That's amazing. This is only about 150 years after the flood. How quickly they forsook the ways of Noah and reverted to the same ways as the Nephilim. This is what the Nephilim were doing on the other side of the flood. Remember, the spirits are the Nephilim. Their influence is obvious. Now, let's continue in verse 4. And they made for themselves molten images, and they worshipped each the idol, the molten image which they had made for themselves. And they began to make graven images and unclean simulacra. And malignant spirits assisted and seduced them into committing transgression and uncleanness. And Prince Mastema exerted himself to do all this, Satan. Verse 6, for everyone turned to do all manner of sin and transgression. The sons of Noah had turned every one to the sins of Mastema, Satan, in just a few years, and began to worship idols. Idols of who? Or what? They are worshiping the fathers of the Nephilim, the angels which are incarcerated in Dudael. Thus, the need for idols. These are the Immortals of Greek and Roman religion. And the Titans and the Olympians are the half-man, half-god sons of the Immortals. They were the Nephilim. There are stories of great battles in the events of the Nephilim Wars, 500 years worth. The goddesses of mythology are the wives of the Watchers, the women they took. Mastema has presented them to Noah's sons as an alternative to worshiping Yahweh. And they bought it. Greek mythology is not a myth, but rather antediluvian history as told by the demons, and most certainly exaggerated and glorified by them. These are the circumstances to which Abraham was born into, in Ur of Chaldee, southern Babylon. Abraham was a young man when he began to reject the worship of idols and the demons behind them. He ends up leaving Chaldea and being established by Yahweh, God, in the land of Canaan. Yahweh became known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham's family and clan. They became the children of Israel, Jacob, and went into Egypt during Jacob's lifetime and came out under the leadership of Moses. They were in Egypt for 400 years. And when they came back into the land that God had given them, they were surprised to find it full of Nephilim. Let's look in Numbers 13:33. And there in the land we saw giants. That word is Nephilim. The sons of Anak, which came of the giants, Nephilim, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. It was because of these giants that the Israelites hesitated to enter the land. They were afraid. In the natural, they could never defeat them. I know. Where did they come from? These are not just spirits they were meeting and seeing. These are flesh and blood giants. I believe they had come the same way as before. Angels. But not the original watchers, but rather some of the fallen angels of Satan's rebellion. They had seen the turmoil and the trouble it caused before the flood and decided to do it again, this time through the temple worship of the Gentiles. This worship was all done behind closed doors and in secret, and nothing was openly revealed, but however it happened, they were there. We see in Deuteronomy how extensive they were and what they were like, 2:20. That Ammon also was accounted a land of giants. Giants dwelt therein in old time, and the Ammonites called them Zamzummans. Now, the word giants used in this verse is not Nephilim, like in Numbers, but rather Rephaim. It means invigorated giants, or reinvigorated, revived. These are new giants. They've been revived. The Anakim mentioned in Numbers 13 are called both Nephilim and Rephaim. Their name means long-necked giants. Remember Enoch's camels from before the flood? We find many tribes of giants found in Canaan. Let's look in the book of Genesis, chapter 14, verse 5. And in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer, and the kings with him, and smote the Rephaims, the giants, in Ashtaroth Karaim, and the Zumans in Ham, and the Emans in Shavah Kiriathim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir. Now we see the Rephaim revived giants, and Zamzummans. Their name means roving creatures. Certainly not human creatures. They are also called Zamzummans, which means plotters. They are intelligent, strategic planners, not just animals. We also see Horims, which means cave dwellers. All of these were living in the valley of the giants and even south of Canaan for some time. I think these are all variations of the Rephaim, the revived Nephilim. God tells Joshua when he comes from Egypt to utterly destroy these nations. Now you know why. Their spirits are of the earth. They have no place in heaven, just like the first Nephilim. They may live for an extended time compared to men, but they have no hope for salvation or any redemption. Their fate is seen in Matthew 13, which is a parable concerning the end of the world and the judgment. It is the parable of the wheat and the tares. It's interesting because we are told both the parable and the interpretation. And for the sake of time, I will go straight to the interpretation, and that's found in verses 38 through 43. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of God's kingdom, or the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. This is Mastema we're talking about. And the harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. And therefore the tares, the false wheat, are gathered and burned into the fire. So shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity. And they shall be cast into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Now, while I agree that this parable is generally seen as the saved and the unsaved men of the world, it seems strange that there's no reference to any path of redemption for the wicked ones, who are the seed of the devil and sowed by him. Only their iniquity and wickedness, they are his offspring. They are waiting for judgment by fire. Men are seen as targets of the harvest, and the fields are white for the harvest. But the tares are simply tolerated until the time of judgment. When you look into this term tares, many scholars believe that this is in reference to a plant called darnel and is known as false wheat. It still exists today. It looks like wheat when it's young, and only when it matures and can an experienced person really tell the difference. One of the ways that it is different from wheat is the seed. When you open up the plant, the seed is black and poisonous. It is good for nothing. It is genetically different from wheat. If this plant is what Jesus is meant and referencing, then it's likely that this parable is about the revived Nephilim that Joshua found in Canaan, the genetic offspring of Satan's angels. If this is true, then the Nephilim, the Raphaim, will remain on the earth until the end of the world, the end of the cosmos. This means they are still here today, right now. We are told that Joshua was able to destroy most of the giants, but there are some which escaped and or were cast out. So, where are they? They have gone into hiding, just like the watchers of Enoch's time. They went just beyond human habitation and went underground. Remember the Horims I mentioned earlier, that their name meant cave dwellers? And they could build as much as they wanted underground. Nobody'd bother them. And it's not like they had to spend all their time there. They just needed a secure place to hide when needed. In these remote strongholds, they could work on tuning their genetic problems. We are told in the book of Jubilees 7:22 that the Nephilim were all unlike or unalike, and that there were several major types, verse 22. And they begat sons of the Nephilim, and they were all unlike, and they devoured one another. And the giants slew the Nephil, and the Nephil the Eljo, and the Eljo mankind. In the Bible, The giants were also called roving creatures. Obviously, they did not look human. They were also called demons, which means terrors. They were terrifying. They were non-human, giant creatures roving around, terrifying the people and plotting the destruction of men. If you know anything about genetics and breeding, you know that it is unpredictable. And it takes a lot of time, generation after generation, and you will get a lot of results that are simply not at all what you want. The question is, what do they do with all the rejects? The truly grotesque creatures. This is what the Nephilim are having to deal with. And of course, they're not just dealing with latent or active genes, which is what most breeding is. Turning them on, turning them off. They are dealing with a set of completely different species that were never intended to be combined. In fact, they are both genetically defective. We are told that their fathers are Satan's angels, and they are fallen. Satan himself is also fallen. This is seen in Ezekiel 28:15. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day when thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. We also know that that man is Enos, incurably sick and dying. I went through that earlier. The angels are not monolithic. There are several different types or classes of them, and they have many different traits and to contribute to the genetic pot of the Nephilim. The Bible tells us that some angels have 4 faces. Some can change their form when they wish. Well, I need to stop now, and we'll go over and we'll cover these angels and their traits in the next session to come. Thank you.
This was only one session of many. Be sure to continue watching the Prophecy Project series. If you would like to read more information on this subject, you can find Alan's books on Amazon.com.